The dining room table was set the way I always set it for Christmas. And I had 3 pies: pecan, sweet potato, and a lemon icebox in the corner that I had made specifically for Simone because it was her favorite, and because I had not forgotten that, even though she had, apparently, forgotten a great deal about how to be a decent human being in someone else's home. My son Theodore Morrison Jr. sat at my table with the smile that I have known since he was 9 years old. The one that appears when he has arranged something he considers clever and is waiting to deliver it. I recognized it the moment he sat down. I have been recognizing that smile for 32 years. A mother knows. The gifts had already been given. The BMW was in my garage under the good lighting, with a red satin bow that had taken me 23 minutes to tie correctly. I had driven Teddy out after dinner, my hand over his eyes until we reached the garage door, and when I took my hand away and he saw it, the charcoal gray 2024 BMW 5 Series, his exact specifications, the car he had mentioned wanting since March. He had made a sound that was pure and genuine and reminded me for one moment of the boy he used to be. Then he went back inside and sat at the table, and the smile came back, and something in his posture told me that what was genuine a moment ago was being replaced by something arranged. Simone's Louboutins were on her feet. She had opened the box at the table, lifted the heels out with the careful reverence of a person who has wanted them for longer than they will admit, slipped them on right there in the dining room, and stood up to show them off. I had thought, watching her, that maybe the evening would end well after all. Then Teddy leaned back in his chair. Simone arranged her expression into something composed and cool, my son said, with that smile, that 9-year-old clever smile. Mom. Simone said it's time somebody taught you a lesson. So this year, no gifts for you. He opened his hands in a small, theatrical gesture. Nothing. Empty. Simone looked at me with satisfaction so complete and so undisguised that I understood she had been holding it all evening, saving it, the way you save the best part of a meal for last. My daughter, Renata, across the table, went absolutely still. I looked at my son. I looked at my daughter-in-law. I took a slow breath. And then I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer and I set a white business envelope on the table in front of Theodore Jr. I said, "Good. Then I have one more gift for you both." He picked it up. He opened it. His eyes moved across the first page. His hands started shaking. And that is where this story really begins. My name is Claudette Irene Morrison. Claudette Irene Webb, before I married Theodore James Morrison Sarr in June of 1984, and Claudette Irene Morrison from that day until this one, because the name belongs to my children and to the 41 years I have spent building something worth carrying. I am 67 years old. I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the second of 4 children raised by Addie and Franklin Webb in a house that was small and loved and never had enough money, but always had enough food, because my mother had the particular gift of making abundance from very little that I have come to understand is not a cooking skill, but a character trait, a refusal to let scarcity define the table. My father drove long-haul trucks for 28 years and was away more than he was home. And when he was home, he was present in the way that men who have been away long enough to understand what absence costs try to be. I loved him completely. I graduated from Spartanburg High School in 1976 and went to Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte on a partial academic scholarship, which is also where I met Theodore Sarr in the library, of all places, where he was pretending to study, and I was actually studying, and he offered to help me with something I did not need help with, and I let him because he had a quality of directness and warmth that I recognized as rare and worth investigating. We married the year I graduated. I was 22 and completely certain, which is a combination that either destroys you or defines you. In our case, it defined us. I went to work in hospital administration the year after graduation, an entry-level position in the billing department at Carolina's Medical Center, now called Atrium Health, where I would spend the next 34 years climbing from billing coordinator to department manager to director of patient financial services to, by the time I retired in 2018, vice president of revenue cycle operations overseeing a staff of 200 and a budget I will not put in print, because my mother raised me not to discuss figures publicly, but which reflects what 34 years of dedicated, excellent work in healthcare administration looks like when it is compensated honestly and invested carefully. Theodore Sarr was a civil engineer. He was a quiet man with an enormous laugh and an absolute gift for crossword puzzles and a devotion to his family that I considered one of the great privileges of my life. We had 2 children, Renata Elaine, born 1986, and Theodore James Jr., born 1983. Theodore Sarr died of a stroke in 2015 at 63 years old on a Tuesday morning in March that I have replayed more times than I can count and that I have learned in the years since to hold without being demolished by it. We were married for 31 years. I would have chosen 31 more. What Theodore Sarr left me. A paid-off home in the Ballantine neighborhood of South Charlotte that we had lived in since 1997. His life insurance. His retirement accounts. And a portfolio of investment decisions we had made together over the years that included 3 rental properties, 2 single-family homes, and a townhouse in the University City area that generate income and that I have managed alone since 2015 with the help of a property management company and a very good financial advisor named Patricia Osei, who I trust completely. I also own, as of 2019, a 3-bedroom house in the Steel Creek neighborhood of Southwest Charlotte, which I purchased as an investment property and which I am the sole owner of through Morrison Family Holdings, LLC, the holding company my attorney established after Theodore Sarr died to consolidate and protect my real estate assets. That house on Steel Creek is where Teddy and Simone have been living since 2020. I will come back to that. Theodore James Morrison, Jr. Teddy, since he was born, because Theodore Sarr was Theodore, and we needed something to tell them apart, and Teddy stuck and never left, is 41 years old. He is tall like his father, with his father's jawline and his father's laugh when the laugh is real. And he has always had a quality of ease in social situations that I believe comes from Theodore Sarr, who could make anyone feel comfortable within 5 minutes of meeting them. Teddy works in corporate sales for a logistics company in Charlotte. He has been there 6 years, and he does well. He has a gift for relationships, for reading people and making them feel seen, which is a genuine talent and one that serves him professionally, and that he has also, I have noticed, learned to use in ways that are not entirely honest. He has a quality of telling people what they want to hear that is sometimes charming and is sometimes concerning depending on the direction it's pointed. He married Simone Clark in 2019 at a wedding that was beautiful and expensive and that I helped fund, the way mothers do when they want the day to be what their child dreamed of and when the child's budget is insufficient for the dream. Simone is 37, pretty in a deliberate and maintained way that requires significant time and money, and smart in the specific way of someone who has decided that acquiring things is the primary measure of success and who directs their intelligence entirely toward that goal. I want to be fair to Simone in the same way I have tried to be fair to every complicated person I have written about in my own life, which is to say, I want to see her clearly without cruelty. And what I see clearly is this. She is a woman who grew up without enough and who decided, at some point, that having things would fill the space that not having things had left, and who has been filling that space ever since with a determination that I might have admired in a different context. She is not lazy. She is not unintelligent. She is a woman who has allowed the pursuit of material comfort to override her judgment about how to treat people, and specifically, how to treat people who have been generous to her. The first year of their marriage, Simone was warm to me. Not genuine warm. I made that distinction fairly early, but warm in the performed way of a woman who understands that her husband's mother is a financial asset and who intends to manage that asset carefully. She came to Sunday dinners. She complimented my cooking. She asked questions about my work history with the attentiveness of someone studying rather than someone curious. I was not fooled, but I was not alarmed, because performed warmth is better than performed contempt, and I hoped it would develop into something real with time. It did not develop into something real. What happened instead was a gradual drift, in the direction that drift always seems to go with people whose warmth was never genuinely rooted. Toward indifference, and then past indifference to something I can only call contempt dressed in pleasantness. By the second year of their marriage, Simone had stopped coming to Sunday dinners regularly and had started sending Teddy with excuses. She was tired, she had plans, she wasn't feeling well. When she did come, she was on her phone more than she was in the room. She began calling me Claudette instead of the Miss Claudette she had started with, which I noted but did not challenge, because I am not a woman who makes a battle out of every skirmish. She made comments, not large ones, small, precise comments with a pleasant expression attached, the kind that are designed to diminish without leaving evidence. Comments about my house being very traditional. Comments about my cooking being so Southern, it's sweet. A comment, once, at a family gathering, about how Theodore Sarr must have been very patient, said with a smile that attached a meaning to those words that was not a compliment. I said nothing. I watched. Teddy, across these years, grew quieter around me when Simone was present. There is a particular quality of quiet that a man has when he has been coached on what to say and what not to say around someone. It is a careful quiet, a managed quiet, the quiet of a person monitoring themselves for compliance. I recognized it. I said nothing. I watched. The house on Steel Creek became the thing that clarified everything when I allowed myself to look at it clearly. I purchased the Steel Creek property in 2019, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a quiet cul-de-sac, well-maintained, with a 2-car garage and a backyard with a deck that the previous owners had built properly and which I thought was one of the best features of the property. I paid $289,000 for it. I put it in Morrison Family Holdings, LLC. At the time of purchase, I intended to rent it. My property manager, a woman named Donna, was preparing to list it at $1,750 a month, which was the market rate for that area in 2019 and which would have generated good income. Before the listing went live, Teddy came to me. It was January of 2020, before the pandemic, barely, though none of us knew what was coming in March. He said that he and Simone were looking for a place to settle, that their apartment lease was coming up, that they had been thinking about buying, but the timing wasn't quite right yet, and that if the Steel Creek house was going to be rented anyway, would I consider renting it to them? I considered it. I said yes. I told Donna to hold the listing. I had a simple month-to-month rental agreement drawn up, nothing elaborate, a 1-page document that established that Teddy and Simone were renting the property from Morrison Family Holdings, LLC at $950 per month, which was $600 below market and which I set deliberately low because they were my son and my daughter-in-law, and I wanted to help them build without carrying the weight of a full market rate rent, $950 a month. For a 3-bedroom house on Steel Creek, that was worth significantly more than that on the open market. For 4 years. In 4 years, the market rate for that house had climbed to $2,100 a month. They were paying $950. Every month, for 4 years, I was subsidizing them by $1,150. That is $13,800 a year. Over 4 years, that is $55,200 in effective subsidy. Money I was not collecting. Money that represented the difference between what the market would pay and what I was charging my son out of love. They paid the $950. Not reliably. There were 3 months in 2022 where the payment was late without explanation or apology, and 2 months in 2023 where it came 10 days late. But it came. I never raised it. Not once. In 4 years. Simone had redecorated the house the first year. Paint, light fixtures, new landscaping in the front that she had contracted without asking me. I did not complain. I said nothing about the costs she had spent on my property without my permission, the improvements that legally belonged to me but that she was treating as her own expressions of taste. I let it go. What I did, quietly, about 8 months before Christmas, was have a conversation with my attorney, a woman named Beverly Osei, no relation to my financial advisor, who handles my real estate and estate matters, about my options regarding the Steel Creek property and my son's tenancy. The conversation came after an incident in April that I will describe shortly, which made me understand that I needed to stop managing around a situation and start making decisions about it. Beverly walked me through the options. I told her what I wanted to accomplish. She drafted the documents. I signed them in November, 6 weeks before Christmas, and I put them in a white business envelope that I placed in the inside pocket of the blazer I planned to wear to Christmas dinner. I was going to give Teddy and Simone every opportunity to be decent people on Christmas Day. I had bought the BMW because he was my son and I loved him. I had bought the Louboutins because I wanted to be generous, even towards someone who had not earned generosity, because that is the kind of woman I am. I was willing to be completely wrong about what the evening would bring. I was not wrong. The incident in April is the one I have thought about most in the months since, because it is the one that moved me from patient to decided. I want to tell it to you carefully, because it deserves care. Teddy called me on a Thursday evening in April. He was using the voice he uses when he wants something. A particular warmth that is turned on with intention, a degree of attentiveness in the listening that is a shade more deliberate than his natural way. I recognized it. I have recognized it since he was 16 and wanted the car on Friday night. He said he needed to talk to me about something important. He said Simone had been thinking, and he had been thinking, and they both agreed that with the real estate market where it was, this might be the right time for them to think about buying. He said they had been looking at some properties in the Ballantyne area, near my house, and that a financial advisor they had consulted had told them they were in a good position to buy if they could manage the down payment. I said, "How much of a down payment are you looking at?" He said, $80,000. I said, "And what do you have saved?" A pause. He said, "About 12. I said, "Teddy, you've been paying $950 a month for 4 years. That's $45,000 less than market rent over 4 years. Did you save any of the difference?" Another pause. Longer. He said, "Simone manages the finances mostly." I said, "That's not an answer to my question." He said, "Mama, we just need a little help. $68,000, just to get started." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Teddy, I love you. I'm going to call you back tomorrow." I did not call him back the next day. I called Renata instead. My daughter Renata is 38 years old and is an elementary school principal in Concord, 30 minutes north of Charlotte. She has her father's precision and my stubbornness, which is a combination that makes her very good at her job and occasionally difficult to disagree with. She and Simone have never been close. Renata was polite at the wedding and has been polite since, but she has the quality of seeing through performances that makes performers uncomfortable around her. I told Renata about the call. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mama, what did Simone say when he called you? Was she in the room?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "She was. I'd bet my salary on it." She paused. "Mama, how much have you given them since they got married?" I listed it. The wedding contribution, the below-market rent for 4 years, a loan in 2021 for a car repair that had never been repaid, Christmas and birthday gifts every year that were substantial and matched with less every year on their end. Renata said, "And now they want $68,000. I said, "Yes." She said, "Mama, I need to say something to you, and I need you to hear it without getting defensive, because it's coming from love." I said, "Go ahead." She said, "Simone has been treating you like a bank account with a mother attached to it. And Teddy has been letting her, because it is easier for him to let her than to stand up to her, and he has learned that you will absorb whatever he doesn't manage. You have been the cushion under everything they've dropped. And they haven't said thank you properly in 2 years. I was quiet." She said, "I'm not saying cut him off. I'm saying stop absorbing. Make it mean something when you give. And stop giving when it's not received with gratitude." I said, "When did you get so wise?" She said, "Daddy. I got it from Daddy." I called Teddy back the following week. I told him, with love and without anger, that I was not in a position to give them $68,000 for a down payment. I told him I loved him and I believed in his ability to build something, and that I hoped they would keep saving and keep working toward it. I told him the conversation was not a closing of a door, but a redirecting toward what was theirs to build. He said, "Mama, Simone is going to be really upset." I said, "That's between you and Simone." He hung up. He did not call me for 3 weeks. When he did call, I answered. We talked normally. He did not mention the $68,000. I did not mention it. But something in the texture of our relationship had changed, and I could feel it, the way you feel weather coming, not yet arrived, but present in the air. I started thinking about the white envelope. I want to tell you about the morning of Christmas Day because I think it is important. Not the dramatic part, but the ordinary part, which is what I had worked for. I woke up at 6:15, the way I always wake up, because 34 years in hospital administration calibrates a person's internal clock to the point where sleeping past 6:30 feels like a moral failure. I put on my robe and my slippers, and I went to the kitchen and made coffee and stood at the window that looks out over the backyard, where the crepe myrtles were bare and the grass was winter brown, but the sky was the particular pale clear blue that Charlotte gets on cold December mornings, and I thought about Theodore Sarr. I think about him on Christmas more than other days, not because he is more absent, but because Christmas was his favorite and his presence in it was always large. He was the one who woke the children up. He was the one who made a production of coming down the stairs and acting surprised at the tree lights, even though he had turned them on himself at 5 in the morning. He was the one who burned the first batch of bacon without fail every Christmas and then made a second batch perfectly and served it with the particular self-satisfaction of a man who has corrected his own error. I said, "Theodore, I hope you're watching today. I'm going to need your calm. Then I made my second cup of coffee and I started cooking. Renata arrived at noon with her husband, James, and their 2 children, Elijah, who is 11, and Cora, who is 8. And the house became what a house becomes when children arrive on Christmas, loud and good and warm in all the ways that matter. Elijah had gotten a drone and needed to tell me everything about it. Cora had dressed her favorite doll in a Christmas outfit and brought it to introduce to me formally, which I took seriously because Cora takes things seriously. James, who is a calm and steady man who I have loved since the day Renata brought him home 10 years ago, took over the task of keeping the rolls from burning, which freed me to manage everything else. Teddy and Simone arrived at 2. I watched them come up the front walk through the kitchen window. Simone was in a new coat, camel-colored wool, expensive, the kind of coat that announces itself, and heels that were not appropriate for the weather but that she wore anyway because Simone's commitment to appearance overrides her awareness of temperature. Teddy was carrying a single bottle of wine and his phone. 1 bottle of wine. Renata caught my eye across the kitchen and said nothing, and I said nothing, and we went back to what we were doing. The dinner was everything. The ham was the best I have made in 5 years. I had brined it for 2 days, which I had not done before, and the result was a depth of flavor that James said should be entered in a competition. The dressing was Mama Addie's recipe, which I have been making for 40 years and which improves, I think, every year simply because I understand it better. The rolls were golden and perfect. The lemon icebox pie for Simone sat on the sideboard, pale, yellow, and cool. I watched Simone's face when she saw the pie. A flicker. Something real. For just a moment, not the managed expression she usually carries. I had made it for her and she knew it, and for a second she was a person who was touched by a kindness rather than a woman who was calculating the value of the person who had shown it. That flicker lasted about 4 seconds. Then she looked at Teddy and the calculation returned. After dinner, after the dishes were cleared and the children were in the living room and the adults were at the table with coffee, I asked everyone to stay where they were and I went to the garage. I am going to tell you something about that moment. Standing at the garage door, my hand on the light switch, looking at that charcoal BMW with the red bow, I felt the full weight of what I was doing and what the evening might bring. I had carried both possibilities for months, the possibility that Teddy would receive this gift and something genuine would happen, some return to who he was before Simone managed him into someone smaller, and the possibility that the evening would go the way the envelope in my blazer pocket suggested it might go. I had prepared for both. I turned on the garage light. I went back inside and told Teddy I had one more gift for him. Teddy stood in the garage and looked at the BMW and made that sound. The genuine one, the one from before. He walked around it. He opened the door and sat in the driver's seat and put his hands on the wheel, and in that moment he was 22 years old again, my boy, my firstborn, and I felt the love of it, the way you feel something that has always been true regardless of what has been piled on top of it. He said, "Mama, this is too much." I said, "You're worth it." And in that moment, I meant it. Whatever came later, I meant it then. We went back inside. Simone opened her box. She lifted the Louboutins out the way I described. Carefully, reverently, the real response of a woman who has wanted something for a long time. She put them on at the table. She stood up. She walked a small circle. She sat back down. She said, "Thank you, Claudette. Not Miss Claudette. Not Mama," which is what I would have preferred. Claudette. I said, "You're welcome." Renata handed her children their gifts. James opened the thing I had gotten him. A first edition of a book by a historian he had mentioned 3 times over the past year, which I had spent 6 weeks tracking down. And he was genuinely moved in the quiet way that James is genuinely moved by things. And he said, "Claudette, how did you?" And I said, "I was paying attention." That is what love looks like, paying attention. Then Teddy leaned back in his chair. I saw it happening and I let it happen because I had decided, months ago, that I was not going to intercept this. I was going to let it land the way it was meant to land, and I was going to respond exactly as I had planned. He said, "Mom, Simone told me it's time to teach you a lesson." So this year, he opened his hands, that small theatrical gesture. "No gifts for you." Simone's expression was the one I described. Complete. Satisfied. The expression of a woman who has planned a humiliation and is watching it execute. Renata said, quietly, "Teddy." I raised my hand. Not dramatically, just a small motion. And Renata stopped. I looked at my son. I looked at my daughter-in-law. I took one breath. I reached into my blazer and I set the white envelope on the table in front of my son and I said, "Good. Then I have one more gift for you both." He picked it up the way you pick something up when you're not sure whether it's going to help you or hurt you. Carefully, slowly, watching my face for information. I gave him none. He opened it. There were 3 pages inside. The first page was a letter from my attorney on Morrison Family Holdings, LLC letterhead, addressed to Theodore J. Morrison, Jr. and Simone D. Morrison. It stated that effective 60 days from the date of the letter, which was December 10th, 2 weeks before Christmas, the LLC was providing formal notice of non-renewal of the month-to-month rental agreement for the property at the Steel Creek address. The property was being listed for sale. They had 60 days to vacate and collect their belongings. The second page was a letter from the BMW dealership. It stated that the vehicle, the 2024 BMW 5 Series with the VIN number listed, had been purchased by Morrison Family Holdings, LLC, and registered in the LLC's name. It further stated that the LLC retained the right to reclaim the vehicle at any time, and that, per the agreement between the dealership and Morrison Family Holdings, LLC, the vehicle would be retrieved in 7 days if the LLC did not transfer the title to an individual recipient within that window. The transfer was at my discretion. The third page was a handwritten letter, in my handwriting. Addressed to Theodore James Morrison, Jr., it said, "Son, I have loved you since before you were born. I will love you after I am gone. That love is not negotiable, and it does not have conditions. But what I give, what I choose to give, with my money, my property, my energy, my time, those things have always been choices I made freely, from love. Tonight you chose, in front of your sister and her family and your children's memory of this evening, to humiliate me at my own table. I want you to understand that the BMW in my garage and the house on Steel Creek were never yours. They were things I was sharing with you. Sharing is a choice. The choice can be unmade. I am not making it from anger. I am making it because I have been patient for a long time, and because patience without consequence teaches the wrong lesson, and I love you too much to keep teaching you the wrong one. The 60 days are enough time to find something. I believe you can. I have always believed you can. What I no longer believe is that doing it for you is helping you. The car keys are on the kitchen counter. Bring them to me before you leave tonight. Mama." Teddy's hands were shaking by the end of the first page. By the end of the second page, he had set the papers down on the table and he was staring at them. By the time he should have reached the third page, he had not picked it back up. Simone grabbed the pages. She read faster than he had. Her face moved through contempt, and then through comprehension, and then through the particular expression of someone who has been playing chess and has just looked up to discover that the other person has been playing a different game entirely, one that was already several moves ahead. She said, "You can't do this." I said, "I've already done it. The notice was filed on December 10th. The letter is dated. The 60 days have already started." She said, "The BMW." I said, "Is in the name of my LLC. The keys are on my kitchen counter. You can take it home tonight and enjoy it for 7 days, or Theodore can leave the keys tonight and I will arrange for the transfer of title to his name, which will happen the day I receive a written, sincere apology from both of you, reviewed by me and by Renata and found to be genuine." The table was very quiet. Elijah, from the living room, called out something about his drone. Cora answered him. The ordinary sound of children on Christmas filled the space where the adults had gone silent. Renata looked at me. Her eyes were full, but her expression was steady and proud, and I knew, looking at her, that her father would have looked exactly the same way. Simone left the table first. She went to the living room, and I heard her on her phone. Low, tight, the voice of someone managing a crisis call. And then I heard the front door, and I assumed she had stepped outside. Teddy sat at the table for a long time. He did not look at me, and he did not look at Renata, and he did not look at James. He looked at the papers in front of him with the particular expression of a man who is doing math, running numbers on a situation and not liking the sum. James, who is the best kind of man for a situation like this, quietly took the children into the kitchen and started cutting pie. I heard him tell Elijah that Grandma Claudette's pecan pie was the best in Charlotte, and possibly in the state of North Carolina. And Elijah said, "Better than Bojangles?" And James said yes. Significantly better than Bojangles, and I heard Cora laugh. Renata slid the third page, my handwritten letter, across the table to Teddy. He had not read it. He looked at it. He read it slowly, the way he reads things that matter, which is slowly and again. When he was done, he put it face down on the table and he covered it with his hand. He said, "Mama." The BMW was too much anyway. I said, "Yes, it was. I knew it when I bought it, and I bought it anyway because I love you." He said, "I didn't know she was going to do that." I looked at him. He said, "Tonight." At the table. I knew she had something planned, but I didn't know. He stopped. I knew it was going to be something about gifts. I didn't think she would say it like that. I said, "But you said it." He looked at the table. I said, "Teddy, she told you what to say and you said it. You have been saying what she tells you to say for 3 years. I have watched it. I have said nothing because you are my son and I respect your marriage and I know that managing between a wife and a mother is one of the harder things a man is asked to do. But tonight you looked at me at my own Christmas table and you said your wife told you to teach me a lesson. In my own house, where I cooked for you, where I gave you a car." He said, "I know." I said, "That is not who your father raised you to be." He covered his face with his hands. One shoulder shook, just once. I let him have the moment. I did not move to comfort him, which was the hardest thing in that room by far. A mother's instinct to reach toward a crying child is almost physical in its pull. I sat with my hands folded in my lap and I let him hold his own feeling because he was 41 years old and he needed to. After a moment, he said, "The house on Steel Creek." "Where are we supposed to go?" I said, "You have 60 days. You have an income. Simone has an income. You can rent something at market rate that belongs to your arrangement and not mine. This is something you can absolutely do." He said, "She's not going to take this well." I said, "I know. That is a conversation you need to have with your wife. What I am going to tell you is this. The apology I asked for in that letter, the written one, I mean it. I am not closing a door on you. I am not ending a relationship. I am requiring that the relationship be an honest one, with respect that goes both directions. If Simone can find her way to that, I will find my way to grace. I have a lot of grace available. I've been saving it." He made a sound that was not a laugh, but was in the neighborhood of one. He said, "The car keys are on the counter?" I said, "Yes." He stood up. He went to the counter. He picked up the keys and he held them for a moment and then he set them in my hand with a care that I recognized. The care of his father's hands, something inherited, something real. He said, "Thank you for the car." "Even if it was for 7 days," I said, "the transfer of title is sitting with Beverly. The day I receive that apology, she sends it to the dealership." He nodded. He went to find Simone. I sat at my Christmas table with the good china and the candles burning down and the sound of my grandchildren eating pie in the kitchen. And I held the BMW keys in my palm, and I was at peace in the complete and specific way of a person who has done the hard thing and knows it was right. Renata came to the table and sat beside me. She said nothing for a while. Then she said, "Daddy would have been proud." I said, "I know." She said, "The lemon icebox pie is incredible, by the way." I said, "I know that too." We sat together until the candles burned low. Outside, I heard Teddy's voice, and then Simone's, and after a while, I heard the front door. They did not come back through the dining room before they left. It has been 7 weeks since Christmas. I want to tell you where things stand, and then I want to tell you what I hope you take from all of this. Teddy called me on January 3rd. He said he had been thinking. He said he needed more time before the apology was ready because he wanted it to mean something and not be words on a page that he had rushed to get the car back. I told him I respected that. I told him the offer was not expiring. He and Simone are looking for a rental in the Charlotte area. They have 60 days, which, by the time you hear this, will be nearly up. And from what Teddy has told me, they have found some options. It is not what they had. It will be more expensive than $950 a month. That is what the world costs when it is not being subsidized by someone who loves you. The BMW is in my garage. I took the bow off. I drive it on Sundays sometimes when I go to visit Renata and the grandchildren, which I have been doing more since Christmas, because proximity to people who love you clearly and without complication is something I have decided to prioritize. The apology has not come yet. I am not rushing it. A forced apology is just words on paper wearing the clothes of sincerity. What I want, what I asked for, is something that comes from a genuine reckoning with what happened at that table and what allowed it to happen. That kind of reckoning takes time. I have time. Now. What do I want you to take from this? I want you to understand that generosity is sacred and not limitless. I have given generously my whole life, to my children, to my church, to my community, to my employees when I had them, to anyone who came to me in genuine need. Generosity is one of the things I am most proud of as a woman. But generosity without discernment is not a virtue. It is a pattern. And patterns can be exploited by people who have learned that your generosity will absorb whatever they drop. You are allowed to give. You are allowed to stop giving. You are allowed to make a gift conditional on its recipient treating you like a person. These things are not in contradiction. I want you to understand that structure protects you. The LLC meant that the BMW and the Steel Creek house were mine, fully, legally, documentably mine, and that Teddy and Simone's use of them was a privilege that I extended, not a right that they had acquired. If those assets had been in my children's names, or jointly held, or transferred outright, the envelope in my blazer would have been empty. The structure gave me options. Get the structure. Talk to an attorney. I want you to understand that the most loving thing you can do for a child you have raised and protected and possibly over-accommodated is to let the consequence land. Not from anger, not from a desire to see them suffer, but from the deep parental love that knows the difference between helping someone and enabling them to remain someone smaller than they are. Teddy is 41 years old and is capable of building things. He always has been. I stopped building for him so he would have to remember that. I want you to understand something about the envelope. I have thought about why that particular action was right. Why the envelope? Why that night? Why in front of everyone? And I think it is this. Simone chose a public humiliation. She chose Christmas dinner, at my table, in front of my daughter and her family and the memory of my grandchildren. She chose public because she thought public would maximize my shame. What she did not calculate was that public also meant I had the same platform she had chosen, the same room, the same audience, the same moment. She chose the setting. I used it. There is a lesson there about the overconfidence of people who believe they have total information. Simone believed she knew everything relevant about my situation. She knew about the car I was giving. She knew about the shoes. She did not know about the LLC. She did not know about Beverly. She did not know about November. She had half the picture, and she mistook it for the full one. This is the risk of underestimating a person who is quieter than you. I want you to understand the smile. When Teddy said no gifts for you, I smiled not because I was pleased, but because I was ready. There is a kind of readiness that produces that specific expression. Not triumph, not cruelty, but the particular calm of a woman who has done her work and knows it and is waiting for the moment. That smile was not performed. It was real. It was the smile of 67 years of building things carefully and protecting them quietly and loving people fully and knowing, in the deepest place in me, that I had earned the right to sit at my own Christmas table and not be diminished. Not at 67. Not ever. I want you to understand, Renata. There is always someone in your life who tells you the truth from love. Not to hurt you, not to be right, but because they love you enough to say the thing you would rather not hear. Renata told me in April that I had been the cushion under everything they dropped. She was right. Listen to the person in your life who tells you the true thing. They are the one who is really on your side. I want you to understand what Theodore Sarr would have said. He would have said, Claudette, you set that table with the good china. You made the ham and the dressing and the rolls and the 3 pies. You bought that man a car and those shoes, and you did it all from love. And when they handed you disrespect at your own table, you set down the white envelope instead of your dignity. He would have said, that's my Claudette. I am Claudette Irene Morrison. I am 67 years old. I have a paid-off house and an LLC and a charcoal BMW in my garage and a daughter who makes me proud every day of my life and grandchildren who are, both of them, going to be extraordinary. I set a beautiful Christmas table. I will set one again next year. And whoever sits at it will know exactly what it means to be invited.